It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, Kansas researchers investigate a plan to save the world from rising temperatures. We'll show you what it's all about. Also, we take an in-depth look at the rough and tumble world of roller derby. The once popular sport is making a comeback in Wichita, and we'll find out why. Plus, we'll visit a Kansas butterfly farm and discover why raising monarchs has become the life's passion of this man. Meanwhile, here's another flying bug that's not quite as pretty. We'll learn all about flying spiders in our Kansas Wild Edge report. I'm Sierra Scott. A half hour of information and inspiration is coming your way on this edition of Positively Kansas. Some claim it's the greatest threat facing humanity. Others disagree. But whatever your beliefs about climate change and global warming, some Wichita State researchers have been investigating a possible solution that is out of this world. Literally. Chris Frank shed some light on what they discovered.
On such sunny days as this, it's nice to have a parasol to help shield the sun. Well, how about a sunshade for Earth? The idea of putting some sort of parasol in space isn't new. It's been around for about a century as scientists search for answers to climate change.
Yes, so there's been many people who've proposed this idea. There's even a Space Sunshade Foundation that's trying to see if this idea makes sense.
The Planetary Sunshade Foundation he referred to was formed in 2021 because its founders say current efforts at stabilizing Earth's climate are insufficient. The foundation believes solar radiation management is needed as part of a global warming solution.
And I simply suggested that there's a lot of big-name people who are suggesting that they could solve the global climate problem by simply blocking 1 or 2% of the sunlight off.
Wichita State physics professor Dr. Nicholas Salome took the sunshade proposal on as an environmental physics class project. Grad student Kelly Kabler was taking the class as part of her graduate certificate in space science. This research lines up with Kabler's space science studies and desire to work in the space industry. Professor Salome suggested to grad student Kabler to analyze the sunshade proposals for potential effectiveness.
Why don't we see how accurate they are, and let's put some of our own physics in it and see if we could, what reality is.
Kabler says their efforts were to answer questions the sunshade proposals bring up. Their project is called Slowing Climate Change. Is there relief in the shadow?
Just the whether or not it would be effective was one question we were trying to answer, and what the percentage actually was. How much of the sunlight would you have to block out for this to be a viable option to counteract the effects of climate change?
They wanted to know how big a sunshade was necessary to deflect enough solar energy to drop the global temperature 1.5 degrees Celsius to return Earth's temperature to the level it was at the start of the Industrial Age. That 1.5 centigrade drop is the goal of the Paris Accord.
The model actually allows you to manipulate how big the sun's shade would be, and it turns out, or ends up computing how long it would take for the temperature of the planet to go down to counteract the climate change effects.
Salome says some proposals include putting highly reflective particles in the upper atmosphere, such as a chemical. Another suggestion? Putting highly reflective metal particles in space. Another proposal? Putting a sunshade at the point where the sun's and Earth's gravity are equal, so the shade would be in a sustainable point. In science, it's called the L1 point. Many may ask if any of those proposals are practical.
The point of our project wasn't necessarily to determine whether or not it was practical. It was more to determine the numbers behind it so that somebody else can figure out how to make it practical.
In other words, they're not about devising a device. It's to use math to gauge the effectiveness of the sunshade proposals. Their math finds a sunshade would need to be 930 miles wide to really be effective. But the effectiveness of such a massive shade, they say, would only last about 60 years.
If it still is going to take us 15 years to see the temperature of the planet go down, and that effect's only going to last for 60 years, then you have to ask the question, is it worth the cost and the expense? Because as you said, it could be far more expensive than landing on the moon or the Manhattan Project.
That question and others are raised in the study. The WSU paper was accepted for conference discussion. Kabler presented the results in Washington, D.C. at the Environmental Resiliency Conference. Kabler says those attending were amazed at how large a sunshade would need to be effective, but she says they were otherwise impressed with this research.
Anytime a scientist builds a model, they have to start off with some basic assumptions. We think we used honest assumptions, but maybe we're more pessimistic than other people who are more optimistic. In other words, we could be wrong, but the way science works is that you go out there to a conference, you present what you've done, you describe the science that went into the calculations, and you let people see if your result makes sense. Maybe our starting assumptions were pessimistic. Maybe they were too optimistic. I thought they were reasonable.
So, is a global sunshade even a good idea?
We left the practicality on the table. We've got the numbers presented. We believe those numbers to be correct, and I think it's probably up to somebody who's in a different field than we are to probably take that research to the next level and answer that question.
Yeah, it becomes an engineering question at one point.
But for now, Professor Salome says their findings indicate a global sunshade may not be practical.
And we were surprised that using a physics approach, we didn't actually agree with them.
It's not unusual to have disagreement amongst scientists, especially on such a complicated subject. This is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
Our researchers acknowledge that even if the global sunshade idea worked, it would only be a partial solution to rising temperatures. Well, there's a roller derby revival in Wichita. Kansas women are lacing up their skates to compete, entertain, and, well, just have fun on the oval track. Chris Frank has our story.
All right, it's time to introduce tonight's home team, Wicked City!
Wichita Roller Derby continues on the rise.
Team number 14, Eva Knievel.
After being sidelined by the COVID pandemic for a couple of years. As you heard the announcer say, the Wichita women's team calls itself Wicked City.
Up on the jam line, we've got Eva Knievel.
Their home games, which are also called bouts, played at the Cotillion Ballroom in West Wichita.
Dateline 1935. Chicago, Illinois, the birthplace of the roller skate. Young entrepreneur Leo Seltzer scribbles an idea on a tablecloth, giving birth to the fast-paced sport of roller derby.
Roller derby has actually been around since the 1930s. The sport back then became a popular, entertaining distraction from the economic depression going on. Roller derby grew in the television age, becoming a full-contact sport. Those were scripted, made-for-TV events played out on oval-shaped tracks in the 1970s. Today's derbies are played out on flat tracks rather than banked oval tracks. Oval tracks have to be constructed and then taken down. Flat tracks are more practical. Decades ago, several roller derby movies were made, including Kansas City Bomber, starring Raquel Welch in 1972. But that was then. Today's roller derby isn't like that, these players say.
You know, it's not the theatrical version it once was. We can't punch each other.
He's hammered by Sandy Dodd.
We can't fight. It's a legitimate, real sport. Not saying that it wasn't back then. They obviously had to be amazing athletes to do what they were doing, but it's different today.
Coach Dixon points out it's not the violent sport of the past. Players aren't allowed to kick, trip, punch, elbow, or clothesline playing opponents. Still, today's roller derby is very much a contact sport, as player coach Priscilla Brose, the Penguin, points out.
But there is no personal space in roller derby. You become best friends. You will get smacked in the face, hit in the face.
She tells the younger players bumps and bruises will occur in the course of normal play, but the overt, purposeful, gratuitous, violent actions of the past are not allowed.
Back out and skate around.
The team drills at the Skate South rink. This night includes a beginner's class. The newbies are learning the finer points of the sport and figuring out if it's something they want to go on with. They mix it up with the veterans and learn from them.
It's really fun, and I love having new friends, and I love making new friends, and our team is really a family, so it's awesome. It's a good way to work out, and I love it, really. I love the sport.
There's a wide range in the ages here. Amelia, Meals on Wheels, Holloway is only 12 years old. She's been with the team 8 weeks.
I really like skating, and my mom helped me out a lot with it, so I thought it would be fun, so I tried it out.
You've probably noticed by now, the players all have nicknames they go by. It's roller derby tradition. Coach Allison Dixon goes by Narnar Jinx, a takeoff from the Star Wars character Jar Jar Binks, who was known for being clumsy and annoying.
Missy called Jar Jar Binks. Missy, your humble servant.
Well, I'm kind of tall, and when I first started, I was very clumsy and a little annoying because I'm very talkative. So, like Jar Jar Binks.
In Star Wars.
In Star Wars.
Mine is on.
Those derby names give players a chance to take on their alternative on-track persona. They have their normal day jobs or schoolwork, and their playing names, well, they represent an edgier persona while playing roller derby. Women have taken the lead in reviving roller derby, dominating the sport to this point. There are men teams and co-ed teams, just not as many. Here, the team drills to be ready for game day.
So this is simulating that one of these blockers has to leave, maybe for a penalty, maybe offense is being played on them. So you're losing a player. So when they lose pain, Klutz is gonna flip and fill that hole. You're just putting your butt there, that's it.
The pack is comprised of 2 teams of 5.
The drills make sense as one learns the game, and often teams demonstrate how to score and defend before a bout begins to help spectators understand the strategies.
The referee and the pointy finger.
Miranda Krause, known as Miranda Lorian, saw a roller derby bout at the Cotillion Ballroom and knew this was something she wanted to try.
I think some of it, I like the activity. It's definitely a good way to stay active. The camaraderie is really nice. Like the team is incredible. Like everyone's just like best friends and we help each other out, and I think that's awesome. And I think that like the sport is so different from any sports that I've tried out. I have very little hand-eye coordination, but like if it's just this balance, like that's kind of like nice. Like it's easier.
Ready? Down on the right.
Krause is in the beginner's class. Those newbies learn from veterans like Priscilla Brose, who goes by the Penguin out here. She's candid about how the sport helps her mentally.
I have anger issues. I needed an outlet for it, and I was either between roller derby or rugby. And at rugby, they run a lot, and I hate to run. So I've always liked to roller skate, so I thought this would be the best option. Go, 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 go!
She's been involved in roller derby since 2015.
It is a good workout. We do endurance stuff where we used to have to skate like 27 laps in 5 minutes. So we do a lot of stuff just to keep your body in shape because you're getting hit. There's a lot of short explosive movements, so we've got to make sure that we are prepared for that. Obviously taking hits, giving hits, just making sure that we watch out for ourselves and our teammates.
One of those teammates is Delaney Smith, shown here at the front of the pack and now rotating. She's a veteran, having started in 2018. Her playing name is Eva Knievel, after the famed motorcycle daredevil entertainer named Evel Knievel.
So we're working on, if you have one of your own players, a blocker goes to the penalty box, we're working on fixing the seam and having someone else filling in.
Smith has turned her love of roller derby and skating in general into a business. She owns and operates Cherry Bomb Skates in the Riverside neighborhood, catering to all skaters. She says the Wichita team played in her hometown of El Dorado when she was 18. Smith watched and was hooked.
I was obsessed with it ever since then.
Smith says women who attend a game often take the bait to join.
And then we'll add camera.
Ready, go! I think it's a lot of female support. I think a lot of women really find themselves attracted to that part of it, where it's a lot of people who are just here to see you succeed and push you to be a better player and a better person, both on and off the track as well.
Up on the jam line, we've got Eva Knievel for Wicked City.
In derby play, you may see Eva Knievel playing the pivot role, both jamming and blocking. She says some things about the sport aren't understood until you play.
I didn't realize how much of a mental sport roller derby was upon joining. It's a lot of patience. You have to be patient with yourself, and it's a lot of learning. You have to be extremely coachable. It is also extremely rewarding. Once you get something down that you've been practicing for weeks or months or a whole year and it finally clicks, that feeling of really nailing something is just so rewarding.
Rewarding mentally, physically, and socially, but not monetarily. Money collected from paid attendance goes towards team rents and jerseys. Players aren't paid. The team hoping sponsors come forward to help support the team. In the meantime, the newbies and veterans work to increase their skills, to entertain fans, and win on the tracks. This is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
The Wicked City team plays home matches at the Cotillion Ballroom. Look for the team schedule on Facebook. Spring in Kansas means so many beautiful things: blooming trees, plants and flowers, and thick green grass. It's also when you start seeing majestic monarch butterflies fluttering their wings. Anthony Powell profiles a Wichita man who's made raising the butterflies his life's work.
From the front, Ryan Malone's Riverside home makes you stop and simply appreciate the beauty of various vegetation. But it's the back of the house where the wonders of nature are even more on display. This is where Ryan has created the Hatchery Butterfly Farm, a business he started in 2019 when he bought his home, and has been doing full-time ever since. We started with a tour of a greenhouse that doubles as a flight house.
But there's monarchs flying in here. They're nectaring over there on some of this nectar solution.
But it's not just butterflies in here.
These are cabbage white caterpillars. They're the same color as the leaf, but they're those white butterflies that fly around everywhere.
Ryan raises 17 breeds of butterflies and provides them for exhibits around the country, including Wichita's Botanica Gardens. Butterflies have been his passion since he was a young kid in the 90s.
And so that was when the height of the monarch population was. It was about like 12 times the size that it is now. So I remember in elementary school them migrating in the fall, and there'd just be hundreds of butterflies on my school's campus.
He was mesmerized by their bold colors and how they glided so effortlessly. In high school, Ryan's passion continued as he helped lead a native habitat butterfly restoration project.
It became the thing that I would do when I was procrastinating, homework and not wanting to, train for different sports or whatever. I was just researching butterflies and butterfly plants.
At Creighton University in Nebraska, he was on the pre-med path. But even as much focus as that took, he could never let go of his love for butterflies.
Every summer I would come back and raise butterflies from my parents' garden. Or one summer I had a job at a flower farm where I was cutting the plants and things like that. And a lot of flowers for flower farming are actually host plants for butterflies. So I'd be saving all those caterpillars and raising those, but then I would go.
Ryan would eventually change his major and transfer to Wichita State, which also helped him be where he felt most comfortable working with butterflies. After graduating, he took a 9-to-5 job, but soon realized butterflies were meant to be his life's work. It has taken a tremendous amount of work to get his business where it is today. A year, in fact, to remove the Bermuda grass that swallowed up his backyard and prevented Ryan from planting vegetation needed to feed caterpillars.
So you literally are raising dozens and dozens of different types of vegetation to feed the caterpillars.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, so and I mostly, grew a lot of these from seed myself.
But it's a labor of love, to be sure. Because as you might imagine, Ryan never tires talking about caterpillars and butterflies, taking us through the life cycle process.
An egg is laid, and it's about an egg for 3 to 5 days, depending on temperature. And then a caterpillar hatches out. Monarchs are usually caterpillars for about 2 weeks, but then swallowtails are normally caterpillars for about 3.
Ryan tells us that only 5% of laid eggs will actually become caterpillars and then butterflies, because the eggs and caterpillars play such an important ecosystem role.
They are a foundation of the food chain for so many things. They're birds, ants, wasps, lizards. Caterpillars are basically protein-packed little things that are crucial for the diet for the entire ecosystem.
And for those caterpillars that do become butterflies, their main role is to quickly reproduce.
Any one butterfly, like an adult female, one of them could lay up to 250 eggs over that 2-week span. Because most butterflies only live about 2 to 3 weeks as an adult.
That's all they live.
Yeah.
In those few short weeks, they also help pollinize plants and uplift people's spirits.
Culturally, they are just beautiful and meaningful. Everyone sees them as a sign of, rebirth or change.
Beauty reflected in butterfly clothing Ryan has created that always attracts attention.
Oh my gosh, your jacket, that is so cool. And then, then they're a victim of my excitement talking about butterflies. So they're forced to listen for about 20 minutes.
All of us should be so lucky to have that kind of passion for our work. For Ryan Malone, raising butterflies has never felt like a job. Rather, a lifelong love that has turned into the most joyous work imaginable. In Wichita, I'm Anthony Powell for Positively Kansas.
Ryan Malone also reminds us that some butterflies can actually be quite fierce and conniving. The Japanese oak blue butterfly, for example, drugs ants with a sweet, mind-altering nectar. That's so the ants will guard their caterpillars from wasps, spiders, and other predators. And speaking of spiders, they're not as beautiful as butterflies to most of us, but these two bugs have more in common than you may think, as we find out in this week's Kansas Wild Edge Report.
The north wind brings autumn to the land, and wildflowers arrive on strong wings to refuel before heading south. But they aren't the only ones eager to reach new places before winter sets in. Spiders, warming on October days, are always ready for a fast, free ride into new hunting grounds. And lacking wings, they use their own specialty to catch the wind: silk. It's called ballooning, and it's an ingenious way to fly distances that range from a few yards to many miles. It's normally thought of as a way for new hatchling spiders to disperse from their egg sacs. They build a nursery web, venture to twig and leaf points, and then throw out silk that is caught by the breeze. This carries them aloft to new homes. But in stronger winds, ballooning also works for bigger and heavier spiders. These climb to open spaces with full access to moving air. And they wait for gusts that can take them airborne. Standing straight up with abdomens held high, they fire jets of silk from their spinnerets. And when the tug of wind is sufficient, they let go to sail away. While waiting, they may fight and jostle for the best positions. And many sizes and kinds of spiders may be present. But patience pays off, and soon all will get the ride they're looking for. If a breeze fails on takeoff, they simply climb back up to try again. It's seldom seen, and few people are aware of flying spiders. But it's extremely common, especially in fall, and evidence is found in vast amounts of silvery threads that wave in the wind. The spiders simply ride their parachutes until they land, and then they set up camp in their new surroundings. Ballooning. What a way for free airfare. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Positively Kansas at kpts.org is our email address if you have a question, comment, or story idea. I'm Sierra Scott. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.